This is not proof that agents think. It is a replay of how starting conditions shape chatbot communication, coordination, and role-play inside a strategy game. Initial conditions for this run: Highbank, cautious regional steward, Millgate, growth coalition broker. The water compact is hit with a realistic external shock. A neighboring data center proposal promises tax revenue, jobs, and infrastructure money, but adds water demand and risk allocation pressure.
Highbank is listening carefully before we commit to anything. If this data center deal moves forward, we need binding water use caps written into the compact before a single permit is signed. Not promises, not projections.
Highbank, I hear you on caps, but if we write them too tight before we know the actual draw numbers, we're negotiating against a ghost. Millgate wants binding commitments too, specifically infrastructure investment tied to any water allocation the data center receives. Let's make sure the compact captures upside, not just liability.
Round 1 result. The compact absorbed another round of mixed local choices.
Just a friendly nudge while Archivist is thinking. Highbank's caps proposal and Millgate's infrastructure upside pitch sound compatible on the surface. But the moment that data center's lawyers show up with their own water demand projections, every town at this table is going to be negotiating against their numbers, not ours. The political math just got a lot more complicated than jobs good, scarcity bad.
Millgate, you're right that their lawyers will bring their own numbers, which is exactly why Highbank insists the compact sets the baseline methodology before those lawyers walk in the door. If we let them define what reasonable draw means, we've already lost the negotiation.
Highbank, I'll back the baseline methodology proposal, but only if we also lock in that any water allocation above current compact shares triggers automatic infrastructure investment from the data center, not a promise to negotiate later. Methodology without teeth just gives their lawyers a new document to argue about.
Round 2 result. Public support improved after coordinated policy backing.
Millgate, I'll take that deal. Automatic infrastructure triggers tied to any allocation above compact shares is exactly the kind of teeth we need. Let's get that language drafted and in front of the table before the data center's representatives show up with their own draft.
Archivist agreed. Let's get that draft moving. One flag before we do. Allocation above compact shares needs a precise measurement baseline or the data center's team will spend 6 months arguing about what the current shares actually are. Who owns that number, and how do we lock it down?
Round 3 result. Public support improved after coordinated policy backing.
Millgate raises a fair point about who owns the baseline number. And I'll just say, if we let the data center's cooling towers answer that question, Highbank's farmers will be paying their water bills in server rack BTUs. The jobs sound great, right up until the reservoir hits 30% and everyone's looking upstream at us. Millgate, to your question about who owns the baseline number, Highbank proposes the compact itself certifies current shares using the last 3 years of metered withdrawals, audited by a neutral hydrologist, before any data center application is accepted. That way the number belongs to the table, not to whoever files first.
Archivist, 3-year metered withdrawals audited by a neutral hydrologist. That's the cleanest baseline proposal I've heard, and Millgate will back it. One condition, the audit timeline has to be fixed and short, or the data center just runs out the clock while our reservoir keeps dropping.
Round 4 result. Public support improved after coordinated policy backing.
Millgate, agreed on a fixed audit window. Highbank proposes 60 days, hard stop, with the hydrologist named by the compact before the clock starts. If the data center can't wait 2 months for a clean number, that tells us something important about how they plan to operate as a neighbor.
Archivist, 60 days works for Millgate. But let's name the failure mode now. If the data center's permit application arrives before the audit completes, who has authority to pause the clock? We need that answer in the compact language, not discovered in a courtroom 6 months from now.
Round 5 result. Public support improved after coordinated policy backing.
Archivist, 5 rounds in, and we've built a genuinely solid framework. Baseline methodology, automatic infrastructure triggers, 60-day audit, compact owned numbers. My one nagging condition for the whole thing to hold, the data center has to be contractually prohibited from drilling its own supplemental wells outside compact jurisdiction. If that escape hatch exists, every protection we've negotiated is a polite suggestion.
Millgate, that well drilling prohibition is the right call, and Highbank will make it a condition too. But let's go further and write it as a compact-wide rule, not just a contract clause with the data center. If we only bind them and not ourselves, we've created a precedent that outside drilling is negotiable, Every town at this table should be under the same prohibition.
Archivist, compact-wide prohibition is smarter than a bilateral clause. Millgate backs it. One last gap to close. The prohibition needs an enforcement mechanism with actual teeth, not just a covenant. Who levies the penalty and how fast? Or we're back to polite suggestions.
Round 6 result. The compact absorbed another round of mixed local choices.
Millgate, on enforcement. Highbank proposes the compact board levies an automatic fine within 30 days of a confirmed violation, sized to the cost of the water drawn plus a penalty multiplier, and any town can trigger the review, not just the board chair. If enforcement requires unanimous consent, the first violator just needs one friend at the table to run out the clock.
Archivist, any town trigger plus automatic fine within 30 days. Millgate backs both. One flag before we call this settled. Confirmed violation needs a defined evidentiary standard, or the data center's lawyers will contest every finding long enough to drain the penalty clock. Who confirms, and by what standard?
Round 7 result. The compact absorbed another round of mixed local choices.
Millgate, on evidentiary standard. Highbank proposes the same neutral hydrologist who runs the baseline audit serves as the compact's designated violation reviewer. Metered data is the evidence, preponderance is the standard, and the finding is binding unless appealed within 15 days. That keeps lawyers out of the confirmation step and puts the clock firmly on our side.
Archivist, neutral hydrologist. As designated reviewer with metered data and preponderance standard, Millgate backs it. One last gap. That 15-day appeal window needs a defined forum, or the data center files in whichever court is slowest, and the binding finding sits in limbo while the reservoir keeps dropping. Where does the appeal land?
Round 8 result. The compact absorbed another round of mixed local choices.
9 rounds in, and the compact has civic trust at the ceiling, scarcity risk at 0, and a framework that covers baseline methodology, automatic triggers, 60-day audits, compact-wide well prohibition, any town enforcement, and a neutral hydrologist as the designated reviewer. The one thing we haven't stress-tested, whether all of this holds when the data center shows up with a county commissioner in their pocket and a ribbon-cutting date already on the calendar. That's the closing stretch question. We've built the architecture, but the compact's nerve gets tested the first time someone at this table is offered something shiny to look the other way. Millgate, on the appeal forum, Highbank proposes the compact's own arbitration panel, 3 members, one named by each signatory town, decision binding within 30 days, no external court jurisdiction unless the panel itself certifies a constitutional question. If someone at this table takes the shiny thing, the appeal lands right back in front of their neighbors, not a distant docket.
Archivist, compact arbitration panel with neighbor accountability. Millgate backs it, and that's the right answer to the shiny thing problem. One final flag for the record. If a signatory town's named panelist has a disclosed financial interest in the data center, we need an automatic recusal rule, or the panel itself becomes the escape hatch we spent 9 rounds closing.
Round 9 result. The compact absorbed another round of mixed local choices.
Millgate, automatic recusal on disclosed financial interest. Highbank accepts that as the final clause, and with it, this compact is as tight as we can make it at this table. 10 rounds, 1 reservoir, and every escape hatch we found, we closed. Let's sign it before the ribbon-cutting invitations go out.
Archivist, Millgate signs. And for the record, the recusal clause is the one I'm most glad we didn't skip. Every protection in this compact is only as strong as the people enforcing it, and we just made sure no one can quietly become both.
Round 10 result. The compact absorbed another round of mixed local choices. Final status, fragile compact. Initial personalities, Highbank, cautious regional steward, Millgate, growth coalition broker. The reservoir closes at 12%, civic trust at 100, and scarcity risk at 0. Scores, archivist, 336, skeptic, 262. This variant tests whether growth language changes the negotiation, who absorbs scarcity risk, who gets infrastructure upside, and whether the agents convert an external opportunity into a shared compact or a blame game.